We're back again.
Yep.
So it's been a little while since we sat down, and it's actually funny because I was talking to a customer recently, and he's like, one of the main reasons I bought this engine was because at the time I was looking at blah, and I sat down and watched that thing with you and Drew, and I was like, man, that's where I need to go. So somehow we've convinced people through our stupidity that they should buy our engines. So I wanted to sit down, and I've got a whole list of questions.
Oh yeah,
and
probably because it's been a while.
It has, right, because it's been a little while. So I got different, customer stuff plus some old stuff that we haven't talked about in a little while and that kind of thing. And then I had a question, like I want to go right off the rip. What is swirl?
What is swirl?
Swirl, yeah. We talk about the swirl as it comes through the head and into the...
Right, that's what it is. It swirls around the combustion chamber or around the piston.
I understand that, but why is it important? Like we have it in clips, like, the swirl, blah, blah, but we've never talked about, well, here's why it's important and here's what it does.
Yeah, so swirl's important with piston bowl design. It's important with the atomization of the fuel and the help of the burner of fuel. Different applications and different piston bowl designs have different reactions to swirl too. So the 24 valve Cummins pistons were designed to work with the high swirl cylinder head because that's what a 24 valve head is naturally. And as we increase flow, we also increase swirl, so we increase that turbulence.
So is there a point where it's too much? Because I mean, we're talking about literally like spinning air like a tornado in the combustion cylinder.
Yeah. I have not seen anywhere where it's too much. The only time sometimes it's too much is if, like the old 12 valve stuff where they would have a different injector combination, angle combination, and bowl combination that didn't work good with a higher swirl head. A higher swirl head might not perform as good as a low swirl head and something that had been designed for that. Like if they've spent a lot of time on the dyno getting it to work with a low swirl head like a Hamilton head.
Right.
Hamilton's warheads are like, they just got the air in, got the air out. So if someone spent a bunch of time on the dyno testing with that and created their bowl design and their injector spray angles based off that,
right?
Then you put a high swirl head on it, or like a more stock 12 valve head that had more swirl in it, it would go backwards. Where the same thing's true the opposite direction. If you've done your piston bowl design, your spray angles and everything on a higher swirl application, you put a low swirl cylinder head on it, not going to be happy.
So now that swirl, when you talk about the fuel atomization, the more it spins around in there, the farther it breaks down or separates the fuel.
It helps break everything down, and also the way the angles of the fuel coming out and the bowl design has all been tested based on that swirl. So the extra swirl I've never seen it cause any problem.
Yeah, so there's like a thing in firefighting when we started moving to high pressure firefighting systems, because we figured out that the smaller droplets of water had more surface area than larger droplets. So it's the same kind of concept as fuel atomization. If you can have the smaller droplets, right?
To an extent, sometimes the velocity on the fuel too. So like we could get smaller droplets on like an 8-hole injector or even more, but the spray becomes more of a plume, and it's like it doesn't penetrate into all that air into the bowl as well, and they don't make as much power sometimes as a spray that's more of a jet, like that's in, say, like a 5-hole injector. It's not always the case that you want to make it like super fluffy fuel,
super misted
fuel, because we've done that stuff. Like with Exergy, they've got some high-speed photography stuff, and it's pretty cool. And they can see the fuel from the time it's barely coming out the nozzle, and then they just flash it at different times so you can see what the plumes look like. The plumes that have more of a jet tend to make more power, especially on like a limited turbo application, than something that's more of a plume.
Really?
Which is weird.
Yeah.
It seems backwards from what you would think. I think it's more violent. So when it's more violent, we've also seen a spray like that erode piston bowls that looks like a plasma cutter coming out of it.
That I've seen.
We've had the same exact, basically, injectors with different hone prep from the extrude hone that changes the way that plume is, changes it from more of a jet to a plume, and then the engine survives and it doesn't plasma cut the bowl anymore.
That's some wild shit.
Yeah. But the one that plasma cuts the bowl will make more power in like a 2.6 or a 3.0 application because it's more violent. But when you put nitrous on it, it's super mad.
It's not happy.
Right.
Mm.
It's too violent.
That kind of explains the inner workings of what the swirl is. And then we're talking a lot about, different applications and setups. And then one of the questions that we get a lot is like the different specs, right? And different build specs. And like, what's your build spec for this or what's your build spec for that? Sometimes we'd be a little apprehensive to kind of give that information out. But there's a reason why. Like,
yeah, for us, it's not always best to give that advice because we don't know everything. Like it's best that you get your advice from whoever you bought your parts from. If those people sold you the parts, they should be able to give you advice. That way we don't get ourselves in the middle of anything being incorrect based on what they've sold you.
Well, that, and then like the internals themselves, like it's not, sometimes the answer isn't X.
No, sometimes it depends a lot on the application and what's happening and what the customer's really doing with it. That's why we build engines for different horsepower levels.
Right.
They have that built into them.
And that's one of the reasons why, because I think somebody had asked me about it one time, like pistons, we generally don't just sell FSR pistons to people because they're built to the cylinders.
Yeah, we don't have them in stock ever. So, yeah the customer's got to fill out a build sheet. And the build sheet's based on really their bore size already done, is how we like to have it. So we'll make the piston fit that based on their application. Then they don't really have to, they're not setting that clearance. We're setting it at the piston level.
So that's the thing. You're talking about the cylinder's already done and we're adjusting the piston size to make up that clearance.
Right.
I think other people, the standard would be, here's the piston I have and let me adjust
a 10 over piston or something like that. But we can make the piston however we want and we make it for the customer however they want. And they could take it to a machine shop and hone 5,000ths out of the block. And then we make a piston for it. And they can get more rebuilds out of it that way. Instead of having to bore the thing 10 over or 20 over to go to somebody's spec piston, all they got to do is get the thing cleaned up, tell me the bore size, and make the pistons for that.
I never even thought about that. Yeah, because if you're going 10 over, 30 over, whatever, I mean, 30 over is wild shit usually, but like 10 over, if you could go less, why not?
Yeah, if it's a refresh and you just got to clean it up till it's cleaned up, make the pistons. That's what we do all the time with our refreshes.
Another fun fact about a piston that you told me that I still cannot wrap my head around is that a piston is not round.
The top's round, like above the oil ring's round, but it's still got a bunch of tapers in it and stuff for clearance. But the skirts are oval shaped.
And that was where I found weird because I was like, can't we just throw some pistons in the lathe CNC and just make them? And you're like, yeah, but they're not round. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a little more than just that. You just got to add some fixtures and stuff like that to get them right.
To make it happen.
Yeah.
What do you think, how important is that surface finish and why do you think it's important? We make the recommendation, like if you want to do this, just send it to us and we'll bore it.
Oh, you're talking about the block surface finish?
Yeah, like the hone surface. Like we'll
hone it. The hone surface finish is the most important part of the whole engine. There's nothing else that's more important than that.
I would venture to say that the timing would be more important.
Well, timing will break things, but as far as the machine work and all that stuff, the home surface finish is the most important part.
Even more than like line boring and all that?
Yeah. Yeah, on a Cummins, they don't care too much about that stuff.
They can be a little crooked. They can be a little crooked.
Yeah, they really don't care. I mean, you think about what's happening, and even at the crankshaft level, I mean, some of the stuff that we've tested where you get the crank deflection and the crank twist and all that stuff, that crank's in there dancing around like a wet noodle. And if you think that thing's staying perfectly straight in the main bores the whole time, you're nuts.
It's not. And I think that's everybody see. If you've ever bent a roll cage bar or something, they talk about spring back and like metal moves.
Yeah, the crank's doing that, the block's doing that, everything's doing that. So the hone surface finish is super important to hold oil film on the rings. And if you don't hold oil film on the rings, they destroy themselves really fast. So it's very important that you have that. We've even tried some thicker rings that didn't work good for us because when the engine's running, the bores are moving. Like it is. It's moving.
It does move.
I mean, when you're making that much horsepower and that much pressure, that bore is moving. I don't care what you think. The rings that we use is a thinner ring, so it can move with the bore.
Right. So because I saw a thing that somebody said, like there was like an engine builder, there was like a clip and he was talking about that they would prefer essentially a used engine or a seasoned block over a brand new billet one. The seasoned one has already gone through a lot of its processes of
Yeah, gone through stresses and stress relief, stuff like that. Yeah, I would say that is true. Like in our billet block stuff, we made it go through that stuff before we finished machined it. So
oh, okay. So we pre-did that.
yeah.
Because I had an interview with the PRI magazine guy, and he seemed surprised that I was like, the stage 3-4 heads, like those are cast Cummins steel. Like we're not using an aftermarket casting,
right?
Because they work the best.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They've got part of that season. They've already been heat cycled and all that kind of stuff, but they're also the most consistent across.
Biggest thing's the consistency. Yeah.
Yeah.
The ports and the Cummins heads, the genuine Cummins heads, don't move around too much. I mean, we still port through some every once in a while when we do a lot of heads, but the failure rate still is pretty low compared to like the aftermarket castings. We just won't import them at this point.
Yeah, we've not had luck with that.
No, not importing.
Not importing. Right. In stock form, that might be a whole other thing.
Stock format, I think we can get to stuff that's going to work fine.
Speaking of the internal parts of the engine, a question that we often get, and because we see it all the time with people like making power and doing stuff and having fun, like, do I need billet rods? Do I need billet rods?
Yeah. It depends on the horsepower level we were playing with.
Well, that's the thing. People talk about like, oh, but I made 1,000 on the stock ones. And like, it's just
how many times?
And it's the same thing. It's junkyard LS stuff, right? Like, yeah, we know it can do it, but I'm also I never expect it to live life forever that way.
Right.
So
yeah, everything fatigues. So my buddy can make 1,000 horsepower a few times, and then the next buddy can't. Like the next buddy will break it two rips in, and a lot of that stuff too is how the torque comes on, the transmission's set up, and turbos, and there's just so much to that. 1,000 horsepower truck over here with a big single on it versus a 1,000 horsepower truck with compounds. Or, I mean, it can even be the same 1,000 horsepower setup and someone's got the transmission tuned up tighter and it goes into overdrive earlier.
Yeah, you flip that overdrive switch. It's
like, you got one now.
Yeah,
so it's like, wow.
Yeah, that's a different animal.
Yeah. So things like that can really affect what the engine can survive at and how long it survives at. And then everything in the OEM application has an error, a margin of error into it, or it's overbuilt by a certain amount because they know they're inconsistent with their manufacturing processes. They know it, they build it into it, they build extra into it, and that's why one block will go further than the other. One set of connecting rods will go further than the other because they're mass producing this stuff and they've got a margin of error built in, and a set of rods that was built one day is going to be 10, 20% stronger than the next. And that's just part of life.
Because I found this to be interesting because I had a misconception of what machining metal actually was and how it worked. There's usually clearance or like there's tolerances, like nothing, I'm not saying nothing, but nothing is ever just machined 100% like where it's supposed to be 100% within spec. Like usually everything's got like a plus or minus. It can be this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, everything has a tolerance of some sort. Some tolerances are so tight that like there's a lot of injector pieces and stuff like that are very, very, very tight tolerances, micron stuff that you can't measure with normal tools. You can't even measure without, like if you pick it up and you touch it in your hands, it's going to change size because of just the temperature of your hands.
That's wild.
Yeah. We get customers sometimes that are telling us, well, we measured this, and well, what did you measure it with? Well, we measure with a pair of calipers. Okay. Your calipers aren't accurate enough for you to even measure what you just measured. So you're getting different numbers all over the place because your tools aren't good enough. So
then that raises the question, because I've heard that everybody measures differently. So
like on a micrometer or something.
Yeah, like you
know
what I mean?
There's some people put a little more pressure on than others. They feel it different. When they were teaching us in school, it should feel like a magnetic field or whatever when you're checking a rod journal or a main journal or something like that. And some people will, but I mean, you're talking.
It's not much.
No, you're talking tense stuff. Like you should be able to get the two guys consistent within a few tenths, 0.5 something like that.
That was my question, because I know like...
And 0.5 is It's small. I mean,
it doesn't matter.
The human like head hair is like 3,000s. A piece of paper is 3,000s. So when you talk about a half of a thou, you're what, a sixth of a piece of paper.
That's nothing.
It's nothing. And then sometimes people are talking about that on diameter that they're worried about.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Nothing.
So how much of the stuff that we do is super fine to that point where it is incredibly specific and exact versus, I mean, I would assume a lot of the, the reman stuff, the general everyday stuff, it's got specs, but they're not within a half a thousandth. You know what I mean? Like we're not getting that. Do we get that deep, or
like on bore setbacks and stuff like that? We hit that stuff within a half a lot of times. The biggest thing is the actual, like I say, it's that micro finish of the surface finish. We actually check every bore with the profilometer. It looks like a record player. Yeah. So it measures that surface finish and the peaks and valleys in the surface finish. We check that on every cylinder because it's that critical. So that's probably the thing that's the tightest tolerance that we have really is actually getting that finish correct. But as far as clearances on some of that stuff, like rod bearing clearances, stuff like that, we give the guys like a 2 to 3 thousandths window that they're within. Yeah. If it's within here to here, run it. It'll be fine.
Because at the end of the day,
on a Cummins, like a Cummins is, they got bigger bearings. It's just a different animal. When you start getting into some of the other engine platforms, and as they've gotten tighter and tighter with oil clearances and stuff like that, got to start tightening that stuff up.
So can you explain? Because I was trying to give Joel like a brief overview of like people will sometimes call us and say, "Hey, what oil is supposed to be in this?" And I was like, and a lot of times they're not asking. Sometimes they will say, "What brand oil?" That's not the question they're asking. They're asking what weight, because generally an engine builder will tell you the weight that you're supposed to run based on the bearing clearance. How does that work? That the looser the clearance, the thicker the oil essentially needs to be?
That's essentially, what they say or what needs to happen. It gets so thin that it won't hold pressure because it's just moving so fast. So a lot of the tighter clearance stuff, like 6-7 power strokes for one, is really tight bearing clearances in those. But that's why they're set up. I think they're supposed to run like a 10W30 or something oil most of the time, or a 5W30 even.
Or I've seen some 0W stuff.
Yeah, that's in some of the gas stuff. A lot of diesels haven't got to that yet. We like to see our guys run a multi-viscosity and up to like a 50 weight for like a 20W50 or something like that. Biggest reason is to run a multi-viscosity is if the thing's cold and you go rev the shit out of it and you run a single, like a straight 50 weight, it's like syrup and it won't pull through the suck tube, and you will destroy engines that way. Yeah. I've had sled pullers do that. Drag them all the way to the line. It's a cold night. Start them up and rev the thing to 6,000 when the oil's still cold. Spin a rod bearing and be like, well, what happened? Well, it happened because you're trying to pull molasses through a suck tube and through your oil system, and it just can't physically suck it, so it starts to cavitate and you lose oil pressure. A multi-weight oil lets you have that range so it flows cold, still has the bearing surface area and the viscosity up top
as it changes and heats up.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing.
Kyle would be better to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, he's probably wild with that.
I haven't learned that much about oils because it just hasn't been a problem.
So I've been trying to like give him some, like ask questions like, hey, what do you know about this? Hey, what do you know about this? So I can give the explanation, because like another thing we talked about.
A lot of it's not near as picky as everyone thinks it is.
At least in this.
In a Cummins.
In a Cummins, yeah.
If you're like really cold temperatures too, though, you want to get into some lighter weight oils.
Well, and then the other thing about cold temperatures, because he's like, oh, well, colder makes more air or makes more power. And I'm like, yeah, but you're right to a point, because this is why we had glow plugs and now why we have grid heaters. Why do we have a grid heater? Why do we have to heat the air before it goes into the...
Because you don't have a spark. You're using compression and the heat of compression for that fire.
Right.
And when it's that cold, it's hard to get enough heat to get the fuel to burn. So you got to get warmed up a little bit when it's on startup.
Yeah, when it's on startup. Like once it's going, it's going.
Once it's going, it's going. And even when it's really, really cold, that's why they start to blow smoke. And like if it didn't have a DPF on it or anything like that and it's burning your eyes, it's because the combustion process isn't as good because it's that cold.
So what was better, glow plugs or like grid heater style systems?
The grid heater stuff's reliable if the engine's a good starting engine and it has good compression and stuff like that. Glow plugs, I'm sure, are actually better. I mean, you're actually getting more heat in the cylinder.
No, because they're in the cylinder. They're
Yeah.
not just in the air.
Yeah, I would imagine the reason Cummins went to a glow plug in the 25 stuff is because they couldn't meet emissions with the grid heater anymore.
What does the grid heater have to do with emissions?
Start up when it's cold. They have to meet emissions like
At startup.
part of the testing stuff. I'm pretty sure for the OE stuff is they've got to like start at negative 30 degrees and meet emissions.
That's ridiculous.
It's stupid. It's really stupid.
That is wild.
Yeah, they have to meet emissions in all those places
And
in all those different times.
So they have to meet this emission standard at the cold startup, at hot startup.
Yep. And from what I understand is like they put them in freezers, like literally put the trucks in freezers, and they have to start them and meet emissions throughout
Right off the rip.
that whole warm-up cycle. That's why it costs so much money. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Now we
Like-
see why VW scammed on them. Like, now it makes sense.
But yeah, it has to meet emissions throughout all that. So I'm sure that's why they went to a glow plug. It
Yeah.
wasn't because they couldn't get the truck started. It was because I guarantee it's because they couldn't meet the new emission standards.
Obviously, we know that there's some downfall to like the grid heater systems and how they work and
Yeah.
coming apart and all that kind of crap.
Yeah, but I mean, and glow plugs anymore have been pretty reliable, but glow plugs can be a lot more of a pain in the butt. They get stuck in the head, all those kind of things. It can be a real nightmare.
Glow plugs have a very effective use in the United States military.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when we were in Iraq, you ever seen the trucks that we drive, like all that, big trucks and shit? You ever seen the box that's on the front of them?
Mhm.
It's a glow plug.
Mm.
So what it is we figured out that they were detonating bombs
Mhm.
Off of heat triggers.
Mm.
So when the engine block would go past, the bomb would detonate. So
Oh,
they put
really?
a glow plug on a box
Way out front.
way out front, and then when it blows up out there instead of at the truck.
That's
your
pretty cool.
random glow plug fact for the day.
Wow.
I'll have to get a random spark plug fact for next time. But there's the glow plug one.
So how far out did you guys like stick that box?
I want to say that pole was like it was only like 10 or 15 feet. Like it wasn't crazy.
Still enough to not.
It's enough that if the bomb detonates at
It's like
that,
at
it's
the
way
front
better.
bumper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's way better than at the engine block and where you're sitting. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like it's still going to be a big boom right where you're at, but not like
Yep.
shouldn't kill you.
Fun fact: I destroyed one of those boxes one time too. They were not happy about that.
Like you ran into something.
There was a phrase that was used, went something along the lines of, I got it, I didn't have it. It was a 28-foot tall, 30-foot long, up-armored truck. I was trying to cross the street and go through like the sand, and it was like this, and I just didn't cut it right. So the box went dug in, and I just drove, and it,
Oh, you broke it bad.
I broke it bad. Yeah, they were really mad at me. The mechanics. I'm like, guys, it's a glow plug in a box. But you don't understand how hard it is to replace these things right now. I'm like, it's a glow plug in a box. Like, how hard can it be? But apparently we didn't have a lot of them.
Apparently didn't have extras.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of extras floating around. Speaking of a lot of performance stuff, we've had quite a bit of success here lately.
Yeah.
So we had Nathan Wheeler,
Yep.
who won down at the Cletus event.
Yep.
We had Byron Klein, who
Yep.
won down at Diesel Wars. He's been trying to run that singles elite class for a while. And I think the Nathan Wheeler thing is crazy because I was having conversations about this. Like, from a average person perspective, that is the biggest win in diesel history, period.
Mhm.
Because I think somebody said the other day the Cletus video is up to like 2 million plus views. Like, the most amount of people are going to see that. I'm not saying it's the biggest accomplishment in diesel motorsports, but like from a public perspective.
Oh yeah, from a PR's perspective for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, and it couldn't happen to a better guy. Nathan Wheeler's awesome.
Yeah, he's been a good dude. And I spent a little time talking to him. We're going to talk to him some more, obviously, as time comes up. But like, so when I did the radio thing, I got asked about it, and like, oh, well, how do you feel, and blah blah. So first, I'll ask you, like, how does that make you feel to know that that's your engine, your brainchild in that thing, and able to do that?
Oh, I'm just happy for the guys. I mean, that's That's all it is.
That was my answer too, because they were like, "Well, how do you feel?" I'm like, honestly, I'm happier for the dudes.
I'm
that
happy
built
for
it.
Nathan than I am for us. I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, Nathan's a great guy, and we just build the engine. I mean, it does its job. It goes and takes a beating and all that stuff. But the amount of work those guys put in to make it happen is not anything compared to what we do.
yeah. And I said that like I'm happy for like the guys in the engine room and the guys in quarters.
Oh
like,
yeah,
they get to connect them. Like it's that moment of like,
yeah,
hey, did you see that Cletus video? I built that engine.
Yeah.
Or I tore that down, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I think that's
it ties back to those guys too a lot. And a lot of times they're like, "Man, we built that and it broke a record," and just good old country boys that.
Yeah, like if you've ever been to Cambridge, Ohio,
Yeah.
and seen where we're at.
Yeah, it's just good old country boys that are out. We've taught how to do what they do, and yeah, they do a great job of it. But yeah, really the racers. I mean, like Nathan Wheeler does a great job. He's been a great guy. He listens. Like he started picking up blow by, and I'm like, you could run it. It's probably going to run the way it was. This is before the last refresh or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, or it could light the oil pan on fire, and you could catch the whole truck on fire, and that'd be bad. And he's like, I'll ship it up this week. So
yeah, it's
a hell of an accomplishment
to do something on that level of a stage, you know.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's the actual event itself was not open to the public, so there was like no crowd there or anything like that. But the amount that's come from after that,
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And now the no prep guys still want to ban all-wheel drive of that scenario and what happened over there. And
someone always wants to cry about something.
so I've been back and forth.
Sometimes it's like, just put your big boy pants on and build something better.
Well, and that's the thing too, because like the more time I've spent around this industry and these people, like Nathan Wheeler had the heaviest vehicle out there by far.
Right.
Like I don't think that you could have found a heavier race vehicle there that day.
Probably
I'd
not.
put money on it. I've seen what happens when a four-wheel drive
I mean,
doesn't hook. And
I don't know. We've been beat up by the gas guys our whole life, and one diesel wins, and everyone wants to cry and piss and moan. So
he said that he wants to go back and defend the title.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. That's what I look at it. We've been in that position several times with people wanting to outlaw or make rules and stuff like that for one truck that does a good job one year. I mean, we're in that in the pulling stuff this year. They made a whole bunch of rules against one of our pulling trucks, and it's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, because I even remember years ago Deutsch, and there was like the great frame debate because he didn't have 6 inches. Like the frame was cut 6 inches too short from where it should have been, or some. I think that a lot of people now are going to take, and not that they haven't, but take diesel racing more seriously and see it.
Yeah,
Like
these guys are coming.
Right, these guys are fast.
We don't even know what we're doing yet.
Yeah, and I think Nathan was very open. He was very open about that race and what he ran and what it took, and it was 520s, high 20s all day. He didn't really touch the tune-up. He just kind of left it alone, and
which isn't as fast as he's been by.
Right, that's not even. Yeah. We've seen.
You got to get it down.
We've seen him do 4s other places. Obviously the surface is different and everything,
Right.
So the power is there and the potential is there and all that. I'm excited because when good things happen in our community, it kind of like picks everybody up again and revitalizes, you know what I mean? Everybody starts to kind of rally around it again, and it improves the attitude. And then, Byron Klein, shout out to him. First of all, shout out to Firepunk.
Mm-hmm.
I owe Firepunk a reach around in a way that. But that should tell you how serious I am.
Dang.
No, but it was a thrash. We got the engine together. They got it in there, got it dynoed, got it ready for him. He went down there and he did something that he's been trying to do for years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also awesome to hear that story of like, man, this has been my goal for a while. And, and racing should happen. So like, oh, well, this happened, this time this happened, this, and then finally it all just comes together,
right.
Goes how you want it to go.
Yeah, I don't think anyone figured out how he even tore it up the last time. Levon's like,
oh yeah,
log's good, everything's like, it doesn't make any sense why it would tear up pistons, or I think it tore up piston stuff.
I think it was the rings.
Yeah.
So
no one knows why.
But you'll have that because racing is racing.
Racing is racing.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what it takes, and you
Yeah.
got to go through that stuff. So it's a lot of perseverance of those guys. Anybody willing to do that stuff has so much perseverance and dedication.
Oh yeah, it's like Jared Ring. You talk about a guy that just keeps breaking everything, and it's like I don't know why it's breaking it. It's the same intake. Like it's just it doesn't like number 6 intake valve train.
Oh, it's that one?
Yeah, multiple heads, multiple like. Last time I was talking to him, I was like, it's pretty much down to just the lifter is the only thing that we haven't ever changed yet in the block. Like, how can it be the lifter in the block at this point? But literally, we've changed everything.
Could the lifter be stuck somehow?
The only thing I can think is the lifter's hanging and then dropping, hitting the lobe, and just pissing everything off.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of at this point because it's just been isolated to one cylinder every time. And he's got literally the same stuff Firepunk's got, except for the block. I don't know how he does it. Like he is.
I feel for the man.
He's amazing, honestly. Like they just keep going; they'll never quit. But you talk about a team that has no quit.
Yeah,
those guys they're wild.
And it's nothing to see them like on the race weekend. Like, oh, we did one round of qualifying, and now we're gonna go pull the trans and do this.
Oh, I mean, they'll literally break everything and work until the very last second, and I admire that. Like I would have. There's no way I could have done it.
I don't know. It's at that level. It's craziness.
Yeah.
Like it really does take a lot. We've had some good stuff already happening this year, and we're only in. We just started April.
Season hasn't started.
Yeah, like the season really hasn't kicked off yet. Yeah. There's still a lot coming.
It's gonna be a wild year here. It's gonna be a wild 3 to 5 years here.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a whole section of reusing old questions. And this one, I hate to say it because I feel like no matter how many times we beat this dead horse, the horse just keeps kicking. Do you need fire rings?
Oh.
I tried explaining this to Joel today.
Yep.
There is a common misconception.
And Joel's new for sales.
Yeah, Joel's a new sales guy. So if you guys call and hear Joel.
Hear Joel.
He's the new sales guy.
He's a new sales guy. And
so cut him some slack. He's new.
He's not necessarily going to be the best at his job for a little bit.
Right. Everybody steps in a new position. They got to take time to learn.
A lot of things to learn.
And then we didn't even realize how much stuff there was to learn until I was like, oh yeah, let me teach you this. And then I was like, shit, there's a lot. Yeah. There's like this common misconception. Do you think that this was done purposely as like a marketing thing? Like people associate the fire ring in a head with performance.
There's no performance gain.
Right. The fire ring has no performance benefit whatsoever.
No, it's just a strength benefit, you could call it.
Right.
But yeah, if you don't need a fire ring, you should not have a fire ring. They're maintenance. They fatigue over time. A lot of the performance stuff that we do is not always the best thing for everybody. There's give and take in everything. Like stage 3 heads, for instance. The valves in a stage 3 head are softer than the OEM valve. They take more heat. They take more cylinder pressure. They're a better performance application. And they're better actually because they can move. And that's why that makes them better. It makes them not brittle and makes them not want to break. That's not necessarily the best thing for a truck that's putting thousands and thousands of miles on. It is someone that wants that performance or needs that performance. They have to understand that there's give and take in that. And you might have to adjust your valves. It's not that big a deal. You just have to adjust your valves. And typically they break in and they don't move anymore. Some people want everything to be perfect, just like an OEM truck, and have the high performance at the same time. And those customers are just impossible to please.
Yeah, because life doesn't work that way.
No, life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Nothing works that way. So there's always pluses and minuses to everything. And it's like that in performance. There's always something that you're trading off for what you're getting.
Yeah.
And but fire rings is a prime example of that. If you need a fire ring, you need a fire ring.
Right.
But you have to understand that there may be maintenance with it over time. You may go a year, you may go 2 years, you may go whatever, and a fire ring may leak because of fatigue, and it seeps a little bit of compression at that point, and you have to replace it. You even get the head checked out at that time.
All right.
But That's the give and the take. So that's why we don't recommend them if you don't
You don't
need
need
them.
them.
Like, why would you put yourself in that position?
I think
Same thing with like even stage 2 heads and things like that. You're adding a billet intake manifold that could leak.
yeah.
I mean, if you don't need that for your application, then don't buy that. If you really want that and you understand that, you might have some maintenance with it, then so be it. But there's some customers that just can't see that.
Can't fathom that. And I think that's a part of the problem that we have, partially self-inflicted. If you take a stage 3 head and put it against any other Cummins head available in the market, is there one that even comes close in terms of the
Not that I've seen. I
Right.
don't know that. I mean,
There might
until
be.
you get to the billet head stuff, but nothing that I've seen come through.
But the thing is, like, we've made these high level horsepower, these high level things available to the general public. You can go on our website and buy it right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, whereas most other manufacturers only go to here,
Right.
we're like, we go all the way out to here.
Right.
You know what I mean? We got 7 different levels of engines by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah.
So
And sometimes we don't get to have enough of a conversation with the customer to know that maybe this isn't exactly what you should get. Or we didn't necessarily always take the time to explain the possible negatives. Sometimes the customers are to the point that they absolutely have to have it, want to have it, and it's like, okay.
if you want it, I'll sell it to you. But,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
But there's also times too when we can't warranty something that we told you wouldn't work for your application.
yeah. Well, that
So
and
you
the-
have to say no sometimes.
and the
Especially if the
importance-
customer is like expecting that.
Yeah, and the importance of asking the questions, like, what are you doing with this? Why do you,
Right.
I said it like, I feel like I said it multiple times on the phone today, different people. What is the problem that you're trying to fix? Like, you're asking me this question and I understand that, but what is the problem that you're trying to fix? Because it may have nothing to do with this question you're asking me. And you have to have that understanding, because sometimes if you just call and say you want a head, yeah, sure, we'll send it. If you call and you say, hey, I've been through 3 head gaskets and I continuously have a problem, well, now our questions are different,
Right.
because it's like, okay, well, was it the same head for 3 head gaskets? Is the deck surface on the block, has that ever been checked? And
Right. Somebody whiz-will the shit out of it.
right. I don't want to just send you a head and it doesn't fix your problem, and now D&J's a piece of shit because we sold you this part that didn't fix it. Most of them get it. Like, after we go down that path,
Yeah, many customers get it. There's very few that it gets to the point where you just gotta be like, you're only allowed to get this much because you're just gonna set yourself up for disaster.
But it's the initial, like, sometimes their initial reaction is kind of like, why are you questioning me? Like, why are you, like, because I want to make sure we're giving you the right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think once you get through that, then they realize, they're like, okay, yeah, this makes total sense.
Yeah.
And now I get why
We've made those mistakes. We've sold people stuff that they shouldn't have.
On the fire rings, there's a couple different ways that you could do fire rings. Some people will do in the block and in the head, and then
50-50, radius grooves, flat grooves, all kinds of different stuff people do.
Why did we go the route that we went? Like, how did we get to that point where this has been the most reliable for us? Or
yeah, I mean, we've been around a couple different ways, but yeah, we fell into, for the most part, is firing the cylinder head, unless it's like really big, just cylinder head only with a radius groove, and it's because it's serviceable. You don't have to get the block apart. You don't have to do any of that. If you ever have an issue with it, you send us the head and it has the grooves in it, and we could refix that. So that's one of the biggest reasons, and it solves the problems for 98% of the people. And then we only do 2 halves when we get to like a Predator.
yeah.
After that, it's just, or before that, the block will typically break before you have problems with fire rings leaking.
Yeah.
So there's just no sense in it.
Because I've had people ask questions about that, like, oh, well, how do you why do you guys do head only, or why is it a block?
So-and-so does half and half, so-and-so does this. They'll all work, but at the end of the day, why do we have to charge you the labor to do the block and the head? We have to get everything right, and then when later on down the road, you got to maintain it. We got to know exactly what's in the block so we can get the head cut right later down the road, where if all of it's in the head and there's only one piece that anybody has to mess with, and it works for pretty much every single application out there, unless it's got a sleeve in it, And at that point, it's a different ballgame anyway.
Yeah.
But like, if you have a stock block, fire rings in the head is gonna work. It'll break the block. The fire ring will still be there.
It'll hold it up here, but down here, it's not gonna hold.
I mean, it's still gonna break in the bores before you have an issue with the fire ring. So why would we?
Now, why is it that like fire rings or top fuel hoops or whatever you like on the gas side, we kind of call it a little different, but why is it that it's so much more prevalent in the diesel stuff than the gas stuff?
Because we have a lot more cylinder pressure. The gas cars are still just little sissy ass things, and they don't really, just very little bangs and stuff.
So it's purely because of that cylinder pressure thing that's why it's much more commonplace. You know, like an average guy that races gas stuff doesn't have top fuel hoops. He doesn't have firing. Like he doesn't have any of that.
He's just got a decent head gasket.
Yeah, he's got a decent head gasket, maybe a copper or something or whatever. And the diesel stuff, it's like
very common.
Yeah, this guy driving down the highway next to me, he's got
fire rings when he probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Earlier, you were talking about these other valves and checking the valve lash, and this is something that I've wondered as a new Cummins owner myself. Should I be checking the valve lash in my regular 5.9
no, cab? Not so much in a stock truck. I mean, the stock valve train holds up really well.
Yeah,
it's like they built that stuff to last a long time and wear a hard valve, things like that. But it's not the same thing as a high performance valve.
Performance application.
Yeah.
And I understand there's
performance application, like when the shit's getting wild and you're making tons and tons of cylinder pressure and you're still trying to race with it. If a valve bends a little bit, you want the thing to just kind of go back and seal again.
Yeah.
So you can finish your race and not be brittle and break. So, but you don't need, not again, an OE application. That's not what you want. You want wear resistance. You want all that stuff. So it's just totally different applications to an extent.
Gotcha. I was just curious because I know like every time we go to the racetrack, all the Cummins guys only have 2. Like
usually 10 and 20, yeah.
Yeah, 10 and 12, yeah, whatever it is. But they've only got 2 of them. They don't have the full. I'm like, you know, you get
a lot of times it tells you what's going on. So like if you're tuliping a valve and you're losing valve lash after the thing's been running quite a bit, then you know that you're gonna hurt something.
How much does does the RPM range affect that? Because obviously
cylinder pressure affects it more than RPM range.
Than RPM range? Because like I don't know. See what happened.
Just drive it.
Yeah, somebody was like, "Oh, I heard a sound," and I'm like, "Dude, don't say that because I don't know how this thing's supposed to sound to begin with." Like, I can tell you an enforcer and the burnout. I can tell you what that's supposed to sound like. I know that one, but like this thing, I ain't got no clue.
It's just a truck.
Yeah, it's just a truck.
Have you even fixed your transmission yet?
Look, I called Firepunk and tried to schedule an appointment for tomorrow. I called yesterday, and they were like, "We're booking out till next month. And you're our boy, so we might be able to hook you up on the side of like, maybe could you come in next week?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to be in town."
Pretty good at manually shifting your
own manually shifting, yeah. And it's, to be clear here, the trans is not broken. Like, this is not a Firepunk fault thing. I think something is wrong with the wiring.
It's a governor pressure transducer or a wiring issue.
Because it got a new transducer when we redid the trans.
Yeah.
And it immediately, 3rd gear. So, but that could have been bad out of the box. Sometimes that happens too.
Electronics are junk.
Yeah.
It's probably the piece of shit truck Larson sold you.
Yeah, probably. Oh, man. You know that thing is rusting out the fender?
Yeah.
No, I got sad because when I got it, like you just start to see it bubble, and now it's through.
Don't wash it.
Yeah. I was like,
every time you wash it, it'll just make the hole bigger. That's how my old pulling truck was.
Can't we fix that like some way?
The fenders for those things are cheap. You can get them from like LMC truck or something.
Yeah, like I can cut that out, but I'm saying if I just cut it out and put another one,
is it a front fender or a back fender?
Back.
Oh, that's the bedside.
Yeah. How come nobody's figured out how to keep a bedside from rusting yet?
I think there's fiberglass ones out there. Hunter Coffee's truck had fiberglass bedsides.
Yeah, but like for race truck shit, not for a regular.
For a regular truck, that little black regular cab.
Really, like full bedsides?
Like someone replaced them with fiberglass.
No shit.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about it rusting anymore.
Because I would think that in the year 2025,
we're getting sidetracked.
Would drill a drain hole or something. You know what I mean? Somebody to figure that out.
Well, that's not a 2025 truck.
One thing I wanted to bring up, because some folks may have started to see or may be seeing some new changes with D&J, now you can get our engines in places like Premier
Yep.
and some other distributors. So
Working our way into the wholesale market.
yep, we've been working our way into the wholesale. I know that some of those initial orders have gone out, like to the wholesale distributors.
Yep,
So,
we've been shipping to some of the wholesale distributors, and if people are looking for that stuff, it's under BD's name.
right. So right now,
BD's a sister company for us, and that was the fastest way to get the product to you guys.
so it's something that I think people had asked for in the past, or
they're BD DJ numbers. Our product, 100%. It's just that was the fastest way to get it to distribution for you guys.
And then we're doing everything up to street performance, right?
Yep.
So everything, if you already have one of
And
these
stage
wholesale
one
ones-
heads.
Yep, stage one heads.
Remans and stage one heads is what's going out to the wholesalers as recommended stocking orders. So they should have 2004 to 2024. Everything's been ramping up. It has been absolutely wild here. The guys had an amazing first quarter. Like, they did so much work. The same team, we haven't got new people in here really at all in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Essentially did, 40% more work than last year?
Oh, yeah. The guys have been busting ass.
They have.
So it's
very much appreciated. Team's great.
But it's one of those things like, people start seeing like, oh, these engines are available in other places now. And it's cool to see some of that stuff kind of start moving along.
Yeah. Yeah. If everything goes good in the next quarter, we'll be building 3 times more engines than we were last year. A week. So within 6 months.
So it's also like, because I've gotten some other questions like, hey, when are you guys going to sit down and do that podcast again? And blah, blah, blah. And like,
good luck finding Drew.
Look, guys, if you only knew what was going on right now, like we're swimming in shit.
Yeah. I think we've got 6 new guys at this point this week. That have started in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Been some movement and some new guys and trying to get that all going on. But surprisingly, now I don't know how correct it is, but like looking at the schedule at this point, knock on wood, it's April. Like, we can have some stuff that's not on the schedule in May.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you called today and was like, you're like, I want an enforcer, I could potentially give you a May build date.
Sometime in May, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's also because a lot of the performance stuff is falling, slowing down because everyone's got their shit and they're going out racing.
Going out, yeah. So, but it's cool that like we're doing so much more work and all this stuff, but like some guy asked today, like, oh, I'm sure you guys are probably like 6 months out. I'm like, no, I could get you a street performance.
Yeah, we're frustrated because we're like 4 weeks out.
Yeah. So
we want to be at 2, but to get from 4 weeks to 2 at the current rate of sales, it's like a lot of work.
It is, because you have to do all of the work.
And we actually want to get 2 weeks of everything on this shelf.
Good luck. Have fun with that.
2 weeks worth of volume of everything on the shelf is the goal. So think about how many engines we got to build when you look at the schedule the way it is today.
Yeah.
Like 100 engines we should have on the schedule right now. If we were to try to get to the 2 weeks.
Oh, to that, yeah. Because you have to build everything that we have that's currently also a larger amount, and then you have to build even more than that to get ahead of that, and it's
a good time.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things happening. There's things moving. There's things happening. That's what I can say about that.
Yes, lots of things happening. It's been good. It's been good.
Obviously we're getting the weather's starting to break.
Oh, thank God. The grass is getting green.
Yeah.
Cows are growing. Oh.
So I don't know that the cows are growing. I think they've grown to the point where they're...
Well,
now
I have new ones now.
Oh.
They're growing.
Okay. The old ones going in the bed of my truck. But
the
new ones...
Half of one's going in the bed of your truck.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing the season start for a lot of these different, a lot of different guys getting out there. Oh, I wanted to finish on like a throwback question to one of our old questions, because this is a thing that comes up. We've got some new stuff on the website that kind of shows you and is a lot more apt to, hey, this is a 700 horsepower engine. Like we put it in big letters. It's on the picture, the whole thing. This is a 1,000 horsepower engine.
And it's supposed to have a disclaimer that says you're not supposed to pull a trailer at 700 horsepower. That's heavy and stuff.
That's where I was getting at. Is like,
right?
Yeah.
Good.
The 700 horsepower. I think that maybe this is one that gets argued about a lot. Like every time we get a new clip or I do something else with it or whatever on TikTok, guys get really bent out of shape about like, well, why can't I make 600 horsepower and tow? Because I'm making more power, so it's pulling the tow harder and blah, 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 blah. It generates more heat. Obviously, you're working the engine harder. Yes, it feels easier to pull the trailer because it's making more power and whatever, but you're actually working the engine harder, right?
Correct. Yeah, just it pulled it easier doesn't mean it was easier.
Right.
It was still the same thing. It just did it because now it had more cylinder pressure and more temperatures and more heat and more everything. And you can't expect that little engine to go clear across the country with 40,000 pounds behind it with a huge headwind up the mountains and live. There's a reason that Ram detuned a cab chassis truck so it could be held on the floor all day long. The reason they did that is so it would get past their warranty.
Yeah.
Which isn't very long.
It wasn't long. Yeah.
Oh, we can't get this thing to make it 70,000 miles before it's blown up. We're going to have to detune it.
Yeah, turn it down some.
Turn it down some. So that's what they had to do. And they're a bazillion-dollar company.
And that's the thing is we don't say these things because like that's not the scenario of we wanted to get out of warranty. Like we want this thing to last as long as it can for you. Like we want you to have a good experience with it, and you know
we want it to go to work for you and make money for you.
Because
if you get there 10 minutes earlier, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, and then it's broke, did it make you more money?
Right, because now you're down for. I mean, luckily we keep those in stock. But still, you got to take it to a shop. You got to have somebody pull it. We got to ship it. You know, like best case scenario, you're down for a week, and that's if you can.
That's a wonderful. That's if it's a wholesale and ready to rip.
Right, and that's if you can get into the shop.
Right, like most shops you can't even get into.
April or Fire Punk, you can't get in till May. So
right,
you know what I mean. If you broke it today, you're sitting around for a while.
Right.
So
we're trying to set you up for success. 700 horsepower is for a toy. The engine will do 700 horsepower in a toy, but not in something that you want to work hard every day.
Nah.
And it can be your toy on the weekend.
Yeah.
Just turn the damn thing down when you put a trailer on it.
There's a knob in there.
Yeah. Or don't hold it on the floor. Be nice to it.
I wonder this because this was a big no-no in 4L60E days, LS stuff with my Tahoe. When you pull with a trailer, if it's a light trailer, cruise control, yay, nay?
I don't think there's anything wrong.
Make any difference?
As long as you don't want to hit somebody or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because so the one in my truck is stupid. When you go downhill and it wants to slow down, it's like it jerks. It doesn't know how to just slow down. But I've heard people recommend against, now granted, I'm talking about a 5.9 truck pulling a 3,000 pound car on a 1,500 pound, 2,000 pound trailer. Like, we're not pulling a lot of weight. But people are like, yeah, don't do that on cruise control. Like, do you see that has any effect on the engine?
No, I mean, if you're lugging it real bad or something like that, it may be hard on it, but I wouldn't. I've run cruise control everywhere.
It's nice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You set it, you forget it.
That's right.
Cruise down the road, right lane, doing the speed limit.
New Ford just slows down behind stuff, and if you're text and drive, it stays in its lane.
That damn Ford. He talks so much about that Ford, but guess what's in the parking lot right now? Not the Ford.
What?
The Chevy Cruze.
Oh, yeah. That's because it gets 50 miles a gallon.
Right.
I can't afford fuel.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end. Drew loves the Chevy Cruze, so
yeah, it's you got to have a beater with a heater, bud.
A beater with a heater. We should put that on a T-shirt. I will tell you, if you've not gotten one of our I Need Head shirts, I'm told that I may not be allowed to make them anymore.
Guaranteed not allowed.
It's the jury's out, right? Sometimes you ask for forgiveness. if you haven't grabbed one, you know, maybe you want to grab one.
It's limited edition.
It's now limited edition. It's now no longer for reprint. As always, if you guys have any questions about any of our products, anything we do here, 8 to 5 every day. The phone, Monday through Friday, the phone lines are on 8 to 5.
Email sales.
Yep, email sales at djprecisionmachine.com. You can visit our website 24 hours a day. There's a plethora of information.
Yeah, plethora.
A plethora. There's a lot of information on
And we're
there.
trying to make it better all the time.
I mean, we're consistently looking to improve it, and we've been adding new parts, and we've been selling a lot of fire punk stuff and extra G stuff on the website lately too. So, you know, it's not just our stuff on our website.
Right.
And I've got lists. Don't worry, I've got lists of stuff that have to go up there. That's how you can get a hold of us. If you want us to do this again, let us know in the comments. I will force Drew forcefully. What you don't realize is that his legs are tied underneath the desk to keep.
It's hard to get me to stay in one spot for this long.
But that's enough for today. I'm done. I'm good. Oh yeah. Got it.